Hello, my name is Steve Nesbitt, and welcome to the ULAT. The initials ULAT stand for Universal Language Acquisition Tool. If you're a foreign language teacher, or if you're a parent evaluating the ULAT for the benefit of your child, and you think back on the foreign language instruction that you received as a student, and you compare it with what you're about to experience in the first 15 free lessons of the ULAT, I'm convinced that you're going to say, without a shadow of a doubt, that the ULAT is one of the most bizarre, strange means of presenting a foreign language that you could possibly imagine. And I'd have to concur with you. The ULAT is very unusual. It's different, and for some very good reasons. And I'd love to have the opportunity right now to explain to you what it was way back in the summer of 1980 that caused me to completely rethink my means of teaching a foreign language. And what were the principles I came up with that summer, which revolutionized both my teaching and my results with my students, and which today undergird the ULAT program. But there are two problems. I can't explain those things to you now because first, I'm not convinced that everyone who's watching this video is deeply interested in discussing theories of language acquisition. And secondly, I've already done it. I've answered both of these issues, or spoken to both of these issues, first of all, in the teacher's training section of this website. I would encourage you to go if you're really interested in a deeper understanding of the principles on which the ULAT is based. I'd encourage you to go to the teacher training section and to look at the first two videos in particular. The first one, which presents the problem with a premature exposure of students to the written language, which I call text-based instruction. And the solution to that problem, which I refer to as the natural language acquisition sequence. And then secondly, I would encourage you to go, if you have the time and the motivation, go to my ebook, which is called In Other Words. And it's also found in this website. It's primarily oriented toward foreign language teachers, but you might find a little bit of interest to you as a parent as well in that book. And if you don't have the time to read the whole book, just look at the last two pages. The last two pages are the conclusion, and they highlight all the most important points of the book. However, my purpose for this video is not it's not to go into theoretical discussion. It's rather to be very practical and simply help you start using a ULAT lesson. And for that reason, we're going to go into one of the lessons right now. We'll pick lesson 1.4, which is the first lesson with a test. We'll look at it in Spanish, although you could also be doing the same activities in French and in English as well, if the need existed. And so let's take a look at that lesson right now. Okay, let's assume that we are studying Spanish and that we want to go to lesson 1.4. 1 means that it's within the first unit, and 4 that it's the fourth lesson of the first unit. You can see here that there are two sides to the website. There are the French and Spanish lessons, which you'll access by clicking here on the flags. And then there's the English language, to learn English, side of the website, which is located down here, and one accesses it by clicking on the American flag. So we'll click on either the Spanish or French flag. It makes no difference. You can also click on the logo, and it will take you to the introductory page for the French and Spanish lessons. We'll go next to Contents, and we'll select Spanish. This takes us to the table of contents for the Spanish lessons. You see all 10 units are located here. We're going to click on the number 1 for Unit 1, and then we're going to go down and find the fourth lesson. You see the topic, which is dealt with in the fourth lesson. You also see a stop sign, and stop signs in the ULAT indicate that a test is to be taken within that particular lesson. We'll click on the number 4 here to go to the lesson. Now the sound and the images are loading, and now the lesson is ready to be used. We'll talk first about the navigational bar at the top of the screen here. I'll show you what each of the buttons represents. First, of course, this will take you to the home page. And then, if we go back, you click on Units here, and this takes you to a table of contents for the 10 different units of the ULAT program. If you click on Lessons, that takes you to the table of contents of all the lessons within the particular unit you're currently in. Since we're in Unit 1, I click here and you can see all of the lessons located in Spanish 1, Unit 1. And then last of all, if I click on Lexicon, this takes me to a place where all the vocabulary is located in categories. Here you see, for example, personal pronouns, verbs, nouns, idiomatic expressions. Farther down we have the same items but with a video attached, which allows the student to see a close-up view of the pronunciation of each of these words. I'll simply go to, we'll go to the verbs as an example here. So both the images and sound have loaded, and this is just a way to practice, you might say, one's knowledge of vocabulary, also to look for a particular image to see what it means, at least as far as the target language is concerned. So if I click on these,
vivir,
I'll hear
hacer,
in Spanish
escuchar,
the verbs
lavar,
which correspond
decir,
to each of these images.
preparar.
These images are still images which are extracted from videos the students also see of the actual gesture being performed. Okay, let me go back now to where we were in lesson 1.4. So that is what concerns these 4 buttons at the top left-hand corner of each lesson. Across the center of the navigation bar, you see here a stop sign, which of course, as I mentioned, indicates a test. Then you see a number, the same number for each of these items here. This is a stopwatch, or you might call it a countdown clock. It is used for timing timed activities within the ULAT. In this case, the test at the end of the lesson, the students are given 60 seconds within which to perform that test, and this helps them keep track of how much time they have left before their test is finished. All right, now let's go down to the lesson itself. First of all, the arrows take you to other lessons. This arrow, if you click on it, will take you to lesson 1.3. The other will take you to lesson 1.5. Then you see the stop sign here. The stop sign, as I've mentioned, indicates a test is located at the end of this lesson. If I click on the stop sign, it will take me past all the intermediate learning activities and takes me directly to the test at the end of the lesson. So I'll click on it. And here you see what a test looks like. I'll talk more about this when I get to the end of the lesson in a few moments. But you can see simply this is a way to bypass all the other activities that preceded the test. All right, so we're back at the top of the lesson again. Now, in the first section of each lesson, you come to a very important video. This video here is one in which I go through the lesson with the student. I may make a presentation initially regarding the topic being studied in that lesson, and then I actually go through the lesson with doing a screen capture so the students can see me performing along with them all of the exercises within that particular lesson. I say along with them because I will leave blanks or pauses during which I expect them to respond to me as we go through the activities, and therefore there's interaction involved as they go through this lesson. This is a very important video to watch because in essence it's like having a teacher present with them in the room, even though they may be at home studying completely independently. All right. When the video is finished, they will then continue on and perform, you might say again, the lessons that they saw done with me in the video, but now they're going to do them independently. All right. At the top, first of all, I should mention that the red bar indicates that we're going to a new section. So we're now in the second section. And as we come to a new section, we're going to see a yellow bordered image, which indicates it's called a symbolic direction. And it indicates to the students what activity they're to perform within this particular section. Now, this is necessary because students from different countries and different native languages use this program. For example, this you probably can guess, this image right there means listen. The student is simply to listen as they click on these different pictures, listen to the information provided to them. I can't put it in English, the instruction, or in one single language because there are students from different language groups using the ULAT program. So I use symbolic directions. The symbolic directions meanings are all explained in the very first lesson, 1.1. Okay? Now notice there is a red border around these pictures. The red border indicates that the picture serves as a link, either to a video clip or more commonly to a sound file. So if I click on, for example, this image right here,
él,
we hear the third person singular personal pronoun él in Spanish, which of course means he.
vivir,
This is the verb to live.
Detroit,
Detroit, which gets a lot of play in my lessons because that's the city of my birth. Nonetheless, the students, because of the video they've already watched, these images have meaning for them. For you, just looking at them for the first time, you think, how would they possibly know what this is supposed to mean? Well, it's because they've watched the video or they've seen the lessons that preceded this lesson in which the meaning of these particular images is made very clear. So, for example, this sentence right here in English would be, he lives in Detroit.
él vive en Detroit.
Il vive en Detroit, or in French, il habite à Détroit. So that's the meaning of the red border around the images, that they're to click on them because there is usually a sound file to which they are linked. Okay, we'll now go past, and as I go past all of the lessons within, or I should say the activities within this lesson, there's an obvious observation you're going to make, and that's, where's all the written word? Where's all the written text? Where's all the print? It's just pictures. Well, that's, if you listened to the first part of my presentation in this video, you may understand why. I don't want the students to associate meaning at all with the printed word at this point, but rather I want to present meaning, I should say, or convey meaning in a visual fashion. I should say visual and auditory, because there's sound associated with these images as well. And so don't be surprised. In fact, the video itself, which is the top of the lesson, is entirely in Spanish. Or if this were a French lesson, it would be entirely in French. I make no use of their native language whatsoever throughout the entire ULAT program. And this has really the three reasons for this. First of all, I make it very clear that this is extremely important they understand this, I don't expect them to understand everything as I'm speaking to them. I only use the target language because first I want to keep them in the mindset of that language rather than switching to their native language, English, and ripping them out of that mindset in the middle of a lesson. Secondly, I want to expose them to the sounds of the language. Even if they're not understanding what I'm saying, that's fine. I want to expose them to the sounds and therefore to both listening comprehension and accurate pronunciation. And then last of all, and this was something very, very apparent when I was a classroom teacher, if one perseveres in abstaining from the use of the student's native language over a period of months, inevitably, I found as a classroom teacher, about the month of February, I would notice that when I would give instructions to the students, I would see comprehension on their faces. Inevitably, they come to a point after months of exposure that they will be understanding everything I'll be saying to them. Whereas if one goes back and forth and takes the easy way out, easy way both for the teacher and for the student, and switches from the target language to English for instructions and back again, they will never arrive at a point of total comprehension of the language. So it's the hard way. This is not the easy way to learn the language, but is the best way. Well, let me talk now about the tests at the end of the lesson. As you see, the student has 1 minute or 60 seconds, as we saw up here at the top, in which to perform the test. The percent sign takes the parent or the teacher, if there happens to be a teacher working with the student, to a place where there is a grading key that can suggest how the student's performance on that test could be graded. Then you see 4 stop signs here along with numbers 1 through 4. This is because every test exists in 4 different forms, 4 roughly equivalent forms. The same topic, the same essential objectives are aimed at. However, slightly different examples are used in each of the 4 tests. The purpose for that is so that students cannot simply memorize. They can practice the test in advance, but I don't want them, as they practice, to memorize the answers. I want them to have to understand what they're saying, in essence, and I want them to understand what the proper structure is and not memorize the responses. So when the student takes a test, if he or she is working with a supervising parent or with a teacher, that parent or teacher will randomly select one of these, at the time of the test, one of these 4 different forms of the test, and the student, without knowing in advance which one he or she is going to take, will begin taking the test selected by the parent or the teacher. So let's take, for example, form number 3. We click on the stop sign or on the number 3, doesn't matter. takes us to the third form of this test. All right. You see here at the top of the test a start sign and a reset sign, and then at the bottom of the test, you'll see a stop sign. This is to direct the functioning of the countdown clock at the top of the lesson. Since this is the third test, you'll see this particular countdown clock here being used to time the student's performance. I'll do this just for your benefit. I'll take this test right now in English. If you're a Spanish speaker or a French speaker, you probably could do this just as easily, as this is very elementary. All right, I'll click on Start, and the student will begin to say the statements. He lives in Detroit. Number 2, she lives in Detroit. Number 3, you live in Detroit. Number 4, I don't have to say the numbers. I make the bed, you make the bed. I listen to music, you listen to music. You wash the dishes, she washes the dishes. He says hello, you say hello, she says, number 10, I was wrong. I said she, I think. It's he says hello, you say hello, and then she says hello. Stop. Okay, you see I have 31 seconds left. Apparently I'm relatively fluent in English, and so I had 31 more seconds of those 60 seconds that I could have used in order to take this test. Now, how will the student know, or if you're someone supervising the student's work, how will you know if the student's statements were correct? I would suggest recording their voice as they take the test so that you can compare maybe one sentence at a time their performance with what is found at in the answer video at the end of each of the forms of the test. Here, for example, is the third test's answers. Here are the answers for the third test. I'll click on this video and let you listen to a portion of it.
Número 1. Él vive en Detroit. 2. Ella vive en Detroit. 3. Usted vive
So you
en
see
Detroit.
me here giving the correct answers to the test as you see the test go by. You could stop the video as well as your recording after every sentence to compare the two. Okay, that's essentially it for how a lesson functions, at least as far as the oral lessons are concerned. We'll go down now to the bottom of the lesson. You'll see that once again the arrows are located. So if the student wants to go on to lesson, for example, 1.5, you click on the green arrow pointing to the right, and the sound and images are loading for 1.5. And the student can begin at that point. Let me just show you quickly one written exercise where the students actually are performing the act of writing. This will not occur until the second year, but nonetheless, I'll show you one of those. So I go to click on the units button, and I'm going to go to Unit 5. Within Unit 5 is where we find the first series of written exercises. And then let's go down to we'll take lesson 10 here, within 5.10, and the focus here is on writing questions and negative statements. I click on the 10, and by the way, this is I'm glad this came up here. The first 15 lessons of the ULAT are free of charge. You can access them without any need for a username and password. As soon as you arrive at lesson 1.16 and thereafter, you must provide a username and password, which is what I am currently doing in order to enter the lesson. The images and the sound are loading, and I won't explain all the elements here, but I'll just say, for example, these symbolic directions tell the student that they're to say the statement, listen to the correct answer, write in or type in the statement in written form, and then they are to look at the correct answer as it is provided for them, or they're to read the correct answer. So I'll do this one for you. First step is to say the statement. By this time, this is a very important point. I can't emphasize this enough. When the student starts writing after over a year, or actually approximately a year of instruction, strictly oral instruction, they're writing at this point things that they already know how to say very easily. They've been forming statements like this, making sentences like this for months. And so the act of writing is greatly simplified because after an introduction to the phonics of the language, they're in essence is simply transcribing their speech. A speech which was already well established in their mind. And so this particular statement is vives en Nueva York in Spanish. Or in French it would be est-ce que tu habites à New York? Or in English, do you live in New York? I'll put this in. I'll quickly get a Spanish keyboard here. And I'll try and write this in Spanish. Whoops, if I can find there it is, the question mark with a Spanish keyboard. So I've done the third step. First of all, I said the statement. The second step, actually, I should have listened to the statement to make sure I was right. Vives en Nueva York. So I click on the images and I hear the statement. The third step, I type in the correct answer, I hope. And then the fourth step is I'm going to click on this mouse at the end to read the correct answer. And there you see the correct answer appears up above what I've typed to confirm or to correct that which I've written. Now when it comes to taking a test, a written test, I'll go to the end of the lesson. I'll find under the stop sign that the test again exists in multiple forms. We'll take test number 2. Here you see the statements which the student is to transcribe, is to write. And so clicking on the right hand side, he or she will write. For example, in Spanish, the pronoun's not necessary, but I'll write it anyway. Nosotros no, ¿qué es esto? Nosotros no miramos una película. Nosotros no miramos una película. No vemos una película. And I would continue writing, of course, the rest of the statements. When you see at the top it says Go to Answers. If you click on Go to Answers, when you skip past all of the items within the test, it says Click for Answers. I click and the answers will show up and I can compare the answers on the left side, which are the correct ones, with that which I have written. Well, I hope that was helpful to you. That's a lot to take in a short period of time. But I think you'll find that just trying out the first 15 lessons is really the best form of orientation you can possibly receive. Below this video, you see there's some additional explanations. One of them is an important issue that you might want to be aware of, and that is that 2 different options exist for using the ULAT program. One is the simple access subscription, which gives you access to the ULAT lessons and tests for a period of 1 year. Additionally, there is an option which is called the test correction and feedback option. If you'd like your child to have his or her tests evaluated and to receive oral feedback on those tests, you can read about those options by following the link which is farther down on this page. Well, I guess that's it. I really want to encourage you to take advantage of the chance to communicate with me. You see this address that you can use in communicating with me. If you have corrections you'd like to suggest to me, if you have suggestions as to how to improve on the ULAT program, if you have any questions to which I haven't already spoken. And otherwise, I look forward to the privilege of hearing from you. Thank you very much for having checked out the ULAT thus far.